Hey everyone, and welcome back. Now today we're going to be talking about DeepSeek because obviously the whole internet has basically been going crazy over DeepSeek. And so I want to talk about one, what even is DeepSeek, and two, why are so many people freaking out about it? And then finally, why, what does this have to do with crypto? Is this a good thing for crypto? Is this a bad thing for crypto? How does this kind of fit into kind of the larger picture? So anyway, I want to talk a little bit about that today. Before we get into that though, I did want to just take a quick look at crypto bubbles because we can see actually a pretty decent move to the upside on the day. We did actually have quite an aggressive move to the downside last night after some of this DeepSeek news came out. So I did want to talk a little bit about that, but obviously we can see, green on the week. Most everything is red. I think this is mainly buoyed by a couple of really strong movers to the upside rather than an actual green market. If you can look, I mean, the majority of what we're seeing here is actually red, just a couple really, really big greens here and there. And so keep that in mind. Obviously, the day is looking a little bit more green overall, but the market's still in a little bit of a shaky spot. If we look at the total crypto market cap, we can see about 24 hours ago, I guess we could say, we did see a pretty strong move to the downside. We've mostly recovered from that move, but I did want to show you the total too, because we can see this is approximately the setup that we were seeing, kind of set up for, I would say, the majority of altcoins. So I know we were looking at this on XRP, we were looking at this on Solana, we were looking at this on Bitcoin. There were several others that were looking very similar to this as well. We can see, things were looking really good. I'll actually see, I don't actually have the Bollinger Bands on this one, but we could see, really, really nice wedge forming up here. We could see that, the Bollinger Bands also were squeezing very tight. Both of these usually indicate a break. Again, I was biased given that we were in a bull market that we would see a break to the upside. Obviously, that is not at all what happened. We saw a really, really strong break to the downside. But as I mentioned, every single time we talk about this, this usually means we see a break, one, and then two, given that we're in a bull market, probably it's going to be more often than not a break to the upside. This was one of those not times that we did see a break to the downside. But if we do zoom out a little bit, what we can see, because I did actually see this that I thought was pretty promising, we can see if we look at kind of a little bit of the bigger picture here, we could see we were kind of bumping right up against the top of this descending trend line of this larger wedge that the alt market has been forming since back in early December. We could actually see that with this move to the downside, we actually did dump back right into this liquidity zone. And then we also did actually hit the bottom of this kind of ascending trend line, which is forming the wedge. As I mentioned multiple times, until we break out of kind of one side or the other of these two liquidity zones, nothing in here really makes too much of a difference. This dump doesn't matter. If we pump all the way up to here and then get rejected, doesn't matter. None of this truly matters until we see a break out of one side or the other. So then, of course, as we are trading in here, there is a little bit of a higher risk associated with that. So obviously, you need to kind of be okay with that and deal with that extra level of risk if that is something that you are wanting to do when trading. So as we can see, obviously the market has recovered pretty quickly. There were a bunch of crypto coins on fire sale over even just probably about 12 to 15 hours ago. So maybe if you got in, you may have picked up some at a super steep discount. But again, we'll get back into. So, I mean, if you are looking to trade during this whole market, when we are seeing a lot of this choppiness going around, like I've said many times before, if you are good at playing some of these, kind of ups and downs, I mean, it's been pretty decently range bound over the past, probably month or two at this point. So, if that is something you are interested in doing, I do have the link to BTCC in the description below. If you are interested, it is there. They are doing that 10% bonus on first time deposits. Really, really great deal. I like free money. I'm sure you probably like free money as well. They are doing, in addition to that, the extra bonuses of up to $10,055 per user, and you do not need to VPN. You do not need a VPN or KYC. Neither of those are necessary as well. So if you are interested, I do have that link in the description below. Now, moving on, I did want to talk about kind of what is DeepSeek, what's happening. As we can see, essentially the entire US stock market started down really, really, really heavily today. It wasn't just a sell-off in crypto. And frankly, looking at what we're seeing here, the sell-off in crypto actually looks relatively muted compared to what we were seeing out of some of these. And so, I would say that's probably the first time in forever we've seen something like that happen, where, Google, Microsoft, and Apple are down similar amounts to what we're seeing in crypto. So, pretty crazy stuff there. We could see almost $1 trillion lost in market cap. The market did kind of rebound a little bit today, but the market opened definitely down a substantial amount on the day. So, a lot of this is due to like some fear from this DeepSeek model. And so getting into like, well, what is it? What even is DeepSeek, right? Well, DeepSeek is essentially this AI model that it's just like a chatgpt. It's just like a Google Gemini. It's just like a Meta Llama. It's just like any of these types of things. But the crazy part is it's Chinese. And that's it's not crazy because it's Chinese, but it's crazy because what happened is this Chinese company. So first off, because US and China are effectively in this kind of like economic war right now, China has no access to any nvidia chips or anything like that, any like TSMC, like semiconductors, none of that. Like China can't get any of that type of stuff. And so the general theory has been that China is very, very, very far behind with anything AI, because as you've been seeing in the US, there's been hundreds of billions of dollars being poured into just AI development generally. There's been a ton of like resources, a lot of really expensive people. We just heard about, Elon Musk and XAI. Previously, before they got involved, people were thinking that, you needed about 36,000 NVIDIA GPUs kind of linked together to prove coherence. And coherence essentially means like they all can kind of talk to each other, so they're not duplicating work or being kind of like inefficient or redundant. So that was kind of the general theory before that. And then Elon Musk and XAI came in, and they were actually able to hook up 100,000 GPUs and make everything coherent. And so with that, people are like, oh my gosh, this just changed the game. Our inference and our AI and all this type of stuff is about to get so much better, because we've now just tripled the amount of GPUs that can all kind of talk to each other at the same time. So a lot more computing can happen all at once. Now, XAI has claimed that they're actually actively on their way to 200,000 coherent GPUs, all the way up to 1 million. And so basically kind of the theory here was, if you had 1 million GPUs talking to each other, you could potentially get to the point where, synthetic data, which is essentially like AI models creating data to train themselves on, synthetic data could get better. You could get more synthetic data. You also would just get like more high quality models to get to a point where you could essentially get to like an artificial super intelligence. Right now, a lot of people are kind of explaining AI as something where it's like, it's probably somebody with like 100 to 115 IQ that has access to like everything in the world, right? So it's like, it's smarter than like probably the average person, but it also has all access to all knowledge that has ever been generated by humans. So obviously a massive advantage, but there is this type of situation where AI isn't quite as strong or as smart as some of like the leading experts in their field. And so a lot of this like coherent GPU type of argument with XAI and getting more and more together was essentially, you could now create, somebody that has 140, 150, 160, 180, 200 IQ that has access to all of human knowledge, right? At that point, you're getting to artificial superintelligence. There's not really going to be anybody on the planet that could be smarter than this AI that is created. So that's kind of like the whole thought process and theory behind what was going on. And the reason why this is important is to understand, like, if you're hearing what I'm saying, you're probably thinking like, okay, well, that probably costs a lot. And the answer would be yes, right? I mean, a lot of these companies are spending hundreds of millions of dollars on just training their model, and then they've got to support the infrastructure and the engineers and the people who maintain it and the data and the licensing. It's very, very expensive. That's why people are spending billions of dollars on all of these AI companies. And so that's essentially kind of where the US was at in terms of like AI, right? You need to spend a bunch of money. You have to have a ton of resources. There's no other way. And so DeepSeek kind of shattered the entire worldview here, because DeepSeek allegedly was able to train this model. And I have a post here that kind of shows the statistics. This is actually coming from DeepSeek itself. There was this model, and you can see that it competes essentially. So DeepSeek is this like dark blue one. OpenAI's O1. This is kind of like the supposedly the best model in the space right now. You can see that is the dark gray. You've got the DeepSeek, like I guess they're like lower tech or like lower So this is kind of like their lower weight version of their model, and then you also have the OpenAI O1 Mini, again a kind of the lighter weight version of the OpenAI model, and then here we've got the DeepSeek V3, which is kind of a different one that it doesn't really test super well on some of these other metrics, but others it holds up all right. Essentially, what we can see with DeepSeek R1 is that it competes comparatively and actually outcompetes OpenAI's O1 model in most metrics, if not. So it actually beats it in 3 of the 5 and is comparable, I would say, in the other 2. So really, really impressive. And you might say, okay, well, cool. China developed a model that is comparable with the US versions. Yes, but there's a couple really, really key caveats here. One is that China has no access to allegedly the most advanced GPU or the most advanced NVIDIA cards. One other thing is they were able to do this all on GPUs, which means the level of compute is so much lower, like orders of magnitude lower. And they were able to train this, I think they said on like $10 million. It cost them about $10 million to train this model. So again, an order of magnitude less than what a lot of these other models are being spent. So there's 3 levers that you can pull training AI. You've got actual compute cost, you've got the actual data, and then you've got the actual energy, right? So energy, data, compute. Those are kind of the 3 things that you can pull levers on. Energy, China's energy is far cheaper than what we have in the US just because they produce so much more. I think at this point in time, China produces about triple to 4 times the total amount of energy that the US does produce. So energy is a lot cheaper. As far as data, this is where things get a little bit murky, is because a lot of people DeepSeek is claiming that they just kind of had the data and they used it and they acquired it and it was a lot cheaper to get it. Again, where the data came from, if they got the data from the Chinese government, then maybe they just got it gifted to them for free. And, obviously with the Chinese surveillance state, they probably have a bunch of data. So maybe that could be where they got it. There's also been rumors that maybe they've kind of stolen some of the data or used some of the data from some of these American models. I don't really want to go down that rabbit hole just because I don't really know for sure. And so I don't want to make one claim one direction or the other. I'm just giving you some of the things that I've seen talked about. What actually happened, I don't know for sure. So that's kind of the second piece. And then the third piece is infrastructure, right? And so the fact that these guys were able to train this on GPUs and not these super high-tech expensive NVIDIA chips, also so much more cheaper overall, right? And so there's a lot of different things going on here that has kind of just shattered the paradigm that we were sitting in, which is, in order to have a good AI model, you need to spend a ridiculous amount of money and a ridiculous amount of resources, and then you will get the best model. In addition to all of this, DeepSeek has open sourced their model, so anybody can use it, which is really, really interesting that they would do that. Really cool, honestly. And so now we're going to kind of pivot into well, what does this mean for crypto? I think part of the reason we saw such a dip is, so we saw the dip because people were like, oh my gosh, this is scary, not really even understanding why it's scary. And then I think the reason we've seen so much of the recovery so quickly from this whole DeepSeek situation is because I think this is actually fundamentally a really, really good thing for crypto. Because if you remember, crypto is based on kind of the core tenet of decentralization and open source. Well, first off, this has been open sourced, so that's fantastic. And then second off, decentralized, usually if you're operating in a decentralized manner, accrual or amassing of resources is not in your favor, right? I mean, usually it's there's a whole bunch of resources spread out, fairly interspersed. And so, accumulating hundreds of billions of dollars and, a whole bunch of resources and all this type of stuff to actually train a model flies directly in the face of decentralization. This is why we're seeing, open AIs and the Googles and the Metas and the, I don't know, whoever else is that is out generating an AI model right now. That's why we're seeing all these people doing it, is because it takes a ton of resources to do. And so that's why this is so important and I think so beneficial for cryptos, because if this again, this is coming out of China, and so maybe it's been subsidized. Again, maybe all of the data was given from Chinese citizens was just given to DeepSeek. That obviously affects the economics. How the whole GPU thing, there's a lot of questions to answer, because obviously the Chinese are not the most transparent in terms of how some of this stuff actually came to be. So, but again, assuming everything that they're saying is the truth, this is really, really good for crypto because this drops the barrier to entry into cutting edge level AI, not to zero, right? But like so much lower than what it used to be, which is really, really good. And so that's why I think a lot of the tech companies are really getting wrecked lately, is because they are kind of built off of this whole this whole paradigm of like, we kind of need to pool resources and kind of aggregate resources to the most centralized spots possible, because that's how we get the strongest AI. And if DeepSeek, again, if what they're saying is true, DeepSeek has proven that that's actually not at all the case, right? And so this is kind of what, like, why people are so shaken, is because this whole worldview that we kind of built ourselves on may potentially not be true, right? And so that's why this is so important. Anyway, I just want to explain a little bit today about what DeepSeek is, why people are kind of freaking out about why it's so important, a lot of that type of stuff. Hopefully you did find it useful. If you did, please do give me a like and a subscribe. Liking really, really does help kind of push this further out into the algorithm. I know there's a bunch of people trying to learn about DeepSeek and what it does and how it operates, a lot of that type of stuff. So if that is something you're interested in, like I said, a like and a subscribe really, really helps. Also, if you have any comments, questions, concerns, thoughts, feelings, whatever, things like that, please do just leave those in the comment section below. I do try to read and respond to all of those. And so if you have anything you want me to see, that'd be a great way to do it. Also, if you have any clarifying questions, I know a lot of this stuff can be a little technical. I spend a whole bunch of time learning and reading and doing all this type of stuff with AI. So if there's something that maybe I kind of glazed over or glanced over that maybe isn't totally clear, and maybe I need to go and do a video explaining some of the more like fundamental stuff of AI. It's always kind of a hard balance to strike, because I don't want to like talk at a level that's like, very, very simple, and then people get kind of bored because you're like, oh, come on, we know all this already. But I also don't want to like talk too high where people, it's kind of going over their head. So, obviously your comments and your feedback really does help me try to figure out, how to kind of thread that needle perfectly. So anyway, like I said, I really, really appreciate all your guys' comments, feedback, and everything like that. So anyway, thank you guys. I look forward to hearing from you, and we'll see you in the next video.